Okay, so here we are on the balcony of the drop-in center for VANDU. VANDU stands for the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users. I'm sitting here with the current vice president of VANDU, whose name is Kevin, and one of the volunteers for VANDU, whose name is Joe. So both of them are longtime injection drug users and also community activists. And so how are you both doing today?
I'm doing well. Doing pretty good.
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
Okay, so let's just start by saying, how did you become a drug user in the first place? Do you want to start, Kevin?
I don't know, it just happened. I remember I was 10 years old, my sister smoked a joint with me, and that was it, But I believe that a lot of people who do drugs, they have different kinds of backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of trauma and stuff, and not everybody, but a lot of people. But so it's a way of masking the pain and stuff. So I think that's what got me. The first I had done drugs was like I smoked a joint, and then I smoked pot for a couple of years, and then acid back in the day, with concrete, but do acid and cocaine.
So you're from Vancouver, right?
No, I'm from Toronto.
You're from Toronto?
I was born in Toronto, but I live in Brantford.
Did you move out here to use drugs?
No, I used drugs like all my life, like 40 years. But I moved out here to look for a family member, my sister, who we hadn't heard of and heard from in 16 years.
Okay.
And then a lot of people missing and stuff, and she's living out here, and we couldn't get no answers. My mother was phoning constantly, but she couldn't get no answers through the police, through the hospital, or nothing, right?
So you came out here to search for a family member, and then you wound up becoming a heroin user?
No, I used, like I said, for 40 years, but I've been out here for 14 years now. So I brought my addiction with me, and my mother on her deathbed asked me if I would come out and find my sister, right? And so I did, and it took a while because I come out here, I had 10 grand and brought my addiction with me, and next thing you know, 10 grand's gone. 2 weeks, 10 grand was gone, and still hadn't found her. So somebody introduced me to detox, right? And I never ever.
Okay, we'll get to the rest of your story in a second, but I want to hear from Joe as well. Joe, how did you become a drug user?
Just like Kevin said, around 10, 12 years old, back home, hanging off older people, and started smoking pot. Carried on, go for acid, living in a resort back in Ontario, right? Easy, Acid goes to mushrooms, and you check out other drugs, cocaine,
And it was a general progression, and then you just got hooked.
That's it.
Okay, so one of the questions that I have is, people like Gabor Mate say that it's always, trauma. It's about childhood trauma that is the reason that people become drug addicts, and I think that that's certainly true in a lot of cases, but it's not necessarily true. Do you think that you became a drug addict because of childhood trauma?
No, I don't think I became a drug addict because of childhood trauma, but I think it comforted things, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time, I was pretty young, and I didn't know, and time went on, and the more I used, and I was great.
How about you? Do you think you became a drug user because of childhood trauma?
No, I think it was part of that, and trying to test the waters.
So you just started doing it because it was fun to do drugs. I mean, I'm a drug user. I like psychedelics, and then you get hooked unintentionally, and then it's really hard to stop. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
accurate.
So do you think that people like Gabor Mate are framing things in the wrong way then?
Yeah, I think so. They should talk to people with lived experience. That's the big thing out here. We do a lot of interviews with people with lived experiences. So, I co-wrote on a couple couple papers with this guy in the American Journal.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. That's part of what I'm doing here because I came here and for an event and I saw Gabor Mate speak up on a big stage and there's 2,000 people all paying attention to him, and then where are the drug users? Either that he's helped, and it's like people like you have voices. You're able to speak for yourselves, So why aren't we hearing from people like you? So then I decided, well, I've got a phone. I can go and interview people, and that's what I'm doing right now. So let me ask you this: do you want to quit?
No, I don't. Like years ago when I was back in Ontario, I was doing cocaine. Like I've done speed and like psychedelics and then speed and stuff. And then I tried coke, and I got wired to smoking it, right, doing rock. And I always wanted to stop, I couldn't. But so now, about 10 years I've been stopped doing. I don't do coke anymore, but I do down and side. That's methamphetamine and
Right. Okay, so
I don't want to quit.
You don't want to quit? How about you? Do you want to quit?
No, I don't want to quit.
Okay.
I got to maintain that thing.
Okay.
I'm home to it.
Okay, and so how about you know a lot of drug users. There's tons of people that are coming into VANDU all the time. How many out of them do you think want to quit? Do you think it's 50-50, or do you think most people want to quit? Or
no, they're coming here because they enjoy what we have here in this Vancouver network of drug users. So they can come here and use their space, and we get the odd person come in and ask us for point them in the direction of recovery and stuff, and they just
Safe place.
Don't got monsters here. Give some numbers and stuff. But
and how do you feel about the treatment options that are available? Are they good or?
I wanted in recovery because I ran out of money when I came out here, and it was through finding my sister. But so I learned a little bit about the recovery houses. Some are just money pits, and some are genuine.
Well, that's the thing that I've been hearing is that there's kind of an industry of like poverty pimps. How do you? Can you tell us a bit about poverty pimps? Which are the worst organizations?
Well, yeah, recovery for sure, and I don't know. I'm not certain.
How do you feel about VPS?
Bunch of assholes.
They're a bunch of assholes because from what I've heard is that it's like a lot of people die in there, right?
Yeah.
So VPS, what's the acronym?
PHS?
PHS,
Oh,
PHS,
PHS.
PHS.
Yeah.
Portland Hotel Society.
Yeah.
So
Portland, we
I
don't
live
see
there.
eye to eye in a sense with them.
Portland housing.
Like, VANDU came out 23 years ago, and but I was born and Anderson, the co-founders, and so they started moving ahead and getting things progressively moving on, and then they got funding for social health and stuff, and in Portland they've seen that, and they're strictly housing, they've seen money, and then they just come in like a bulldozer and just because they have money in their lawyers and stuff, and they just sort of
Bullying.
okay, so Gabor Mate, his thing is that it's a crisis of meaning that becomes that's the reason that people become addicts, which is something that makes sense. It's like if the people are trying to escape, but I think there's another part of the story is just people enjoy using drugs. So do you think that the opiate crisis has a lot to do with that people sense that there's a lack of meaning in the society? Are they trying to escape from the society because it's empty and spiritually hollow?
I don't think they put a lot of thought into the escape part. It's just when you get high, it's just it's a comfortable feeling. And, and if they sit down and talk to some people about the escape part, then that would be brought up. But I don't think they think too hard into it.
It's not conscious. It's
I think it blocks off all problems we have too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely something to the kind of escaping from trauma,
Yeah.
escaping, but it's not the only part of the
No.
picture, you know. And you know, there's people that grew up in, you know, middle class homes, two parents that love them, and all of that who are down here. I'm sure you know people like that,
Yeah,
right?
I do,
Yeah. So, well, let me ask you this: do you believe in God?
I believe in something, yeah. I have a higher power.
How about you?
Yeah, I believe in God.
Okay. So, what is your purpose in life? What's your mission?
I don't know, like, I've had many different jobs. I was started as a functioning addict, right? So I worked on a pipeline when I was using, and I worked in kitchens, right? Like, you know, the chef, assistant chef and stuff. I worked my way up. But I came out here, and I always think there's a reason for everything. So it's something guided me in a sense. Because when I came out here to find my sister, I did finally find her, and she had pneumonia, and it was just you know, and I came to doing it. It was just I felt this something. I don't know, when I walked through the doors, like, you're here, and I didn't know what that meant till you know a while after.
Like you heard the voice of God or something, or?
Yeah, I was saying to myself, you're here, or I heard a voice or something like that, but
Yeah.
I didn't know what it meant, but until like after I got involved in the activism and stuff and fighting for human rights and social justice and stuff.
Okay, so your purpose is to be here and to advocate for drug users.
Yeah.
And you've been doing this, what, 7 years or longer?
14.
14 years. 14 years this man has been an advocate for drug users on the downtown east side. So things have changed a lot in 14 years. Do you think they're getting better or worse?
It goes up and down, like, you know, like it's not, when the fentanyl crisis started, like, that was like, what's going on here? Like,
So more people are dying now.
People would say it's government, but, you know, worldwide, right?
Yeah. So was that a commonly held belief that it was the government that was trying to kill drug addicts?
Yeah, some people, yeah.
Do you believe that?
100%.
100% of people
No,
believe
no,
that?
no, not
Okay.
100%. You know.
Okay.
I was gonna say, out of 100%, probably about 60, 70%.
60 or 70% of drug users on the downtown east side believe that the government of Canada is deliberately trying to kill people. Accurate?
Well, yeah. Well, and it succeeded. Like, you know, they had
And
the,
succeeded.
you know, you put it all together like with the Twin Towers, and then
Yeah.
their First Amendment goes, and then, you know,
You have to go to
security,
Afghanistan,
the
right?
borders and all this stuff, and then,
Yeah.
you know, the fentanyl crisis, and then COVID,
And COVID, yeah. So do you know anybody that's died of COVID?
No.
Do you know anybody that's died of
No.
COVID?
No.
Do you know anybody who's died of
I know
drug
COVID.
overdose?
Oh yeah.
Do you know anybody that's died of drug?
Yeah,
How many
couple.
people?
Couple people.
Couple people?
Maybe
Okay, yeah, I don't
probably,
believe in COVID
probably
either. I
about
think, yeah.
hundreds of people.
So yeah, and to me it's insane. It's like, why are all of the homeless people all immune to COVID? You know, if this deadly virus exists, why doesn't it affect homeless people? You know, like, if we should be learning from homeless people, if, you know, somehow they have this miraculous, you know, immunity. Yeah, you know, and if people are weaker, you know, than people who, you know, live on the streets and who are, you know, using hard drugs all the time, then what does that say about our society?
Up and down the alleys, and you know, and sometimes they go got shoes on and just, you know, just
Well,
on
then-
the ground and stuff, and you know, wear masks, right? So
So do you think that the government is trying to kill people with the fentanyl?
I think so.
You think so?
I think he has something to do with it.
Okay. So let me ask you this, just because I'm not an opiate user. You know, I've used like morphine once or in my life or something like that. You know, I really never was into that. So I don't know a lot about opiates. What I hear is that a lot of people die because it contaminated drugs, like tainted drugs. They didn't intend to take fentanyl, but it was in something else, whether that's crack or whether it's some other drug they were trying to take, and then they unintentionally die. So is that accurate? Are
Yeah,
most of the drug overdoses non-opiate addicts?
well, because I know people that are strictly they smoke rock, and there is fentanyl in that, and there is fentanyl in some marijuana and
Besides.
peppers and-
Even marijuana?
Yeah, There's much
Okay.
everything, you know, like
See, that I hadn't heard. That's
illicit,
new.
illicit drugs like on,
Yeah.
on the streets, there's everything for like, the first place. You know, like every single bag of weed you get, but yeah, there's.
Okay. So let me ask you this: where the fuck did all the heroin go?
So I don't know, it's just must be money in the fentanyl, you know.
Okay, so one thing that I find extremely interesting is that the heroin disappeared, and what I've heard is that it was coming in on military planes from Afghanistan. And so after Canada withdrew from Afghanistan, then it makes sense that maybe the heroin dried up around that time. But I live in Mexico. I'm just back here temporarily. There's no fentanyl there. Synthetic opiates are unheard of.
Yeah.
And I was in Australia, a few years back as well. There's no heroin there. There's no opiates there. It's all meth.
Yeah.
And so the question is, why does Canada have this massive opiate problem? Mexico doesn't. Mexico, has tons of cartels, and these are not nice people, they're fucking, chopping people's heads off and fucking like hanging them from overpasses, so I highly doubt that the reason that they're not selling drugs is because of ethical, concerns.
Yeah, exactly.
So why is there no fentanyl in Mexico? Why is there no fentanyl in Australia? And I don't know, don't quote me on that, maybe things have changed in the last few years, but when I was in Australia, there's no fentanyl there. So why is it in Canada, and why is it in the US and not those places?
Yeah, well, when you say the cartel, that's their bread and butter, and they're messing around with it, and they're heavily hung over the overpass, right?
Yeah, and
They're,
so
they're not in the States, they're in the States.
they're all
I
Well,
see
I know
big
they're all
time,
over the
yeah.
place. Yeah,
and,
but
and they're making their heroin. The heroin's selling in the States.
they can get
So
heroin.
you're from the States. You were
Correct.
a drug user in the States. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with that?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, take my place. Okay, so in the States, what's it like?
There's definitely still heroin available, but there was, I imagine, around the same time frame, a big upswing of fentanyl coming into play as well.
So is there heroin still available? It's just rarer?
It's just very,
Okay.
find it.
And is it probably a lot more expensive too?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
See, in a lot of people that do down, they call it, they like fentanyl, right? Which is really, well, they don't really know. A lot of young people, they haven't really had heroin before, so it's just fentanyl they've had,
Yeah,
right?
that's
I would say that was
Yeah,
similar
that's
to
good.
my experience.
Yeah, if you give them, both and try one and to try the other, it looks like you choose fentanyl.
Okay, so they prefer it.
I feel it in my, like, I did fentanyl for a while. I started with pills, and I didn't really know. I was young and naive. I didn't know that it was the same thing as heroin, just packaged and pressed. And by the time I found out, I was physically addicted. I have the history of trauma in my past.
Okay, so you would say that, would you say childhood trauma is the reason that you became a drug addict?
I wouldn't say it's the reason. I don't know if there is one specific reason, but I would say it definitely played a huge role.
Yeah.
Like I live with PTSD. I have long-term PTSD.
Are you comfortable
depression.
speaking about that? Could I
Yeah,
ask you,
yeah.
why do you have PTSD?
When I was 9 years old, my father committed suicide with a shotgun, and I found him and had to go wake my mother up and bring her and show her that.
I'm so
And
sorry.
that was the start of a trauma, basically, and then from there, I've had numerous friends die from opiate overdoses and fentanyl. I've had friends murdered. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and it's a pretty violent city.
Yeah.
And I've had numerous friends murdered in the last couple of years. A buddy of mine was shot in 2019, and another friend of mine was intentionally overdosed with methamphetamine by his dealer. His dealer was suspicious of him ratting him out, so he ran up and gave him an intentional injection of a massive amount of methamphetamine, he had a heart attack and they dumped his body on the railroad tracks.
Well, that's another thing that when you hear about all these drug overdoses, you know, it's never been easier to kill somebody, right? It's never been, you know. So, do you think that a lot of these drug overdoses are actually murders?
I thought about that myself with some of the shady characters I've met. And, you know, I mean, shady is.
It's a tough question to answer there, but
I thought about that, yeah.
I would say it definitely occurs. Like
Yeah.
the concept of a hot shot's been around for a long time.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah. So is it true that if you know, if you get if someone overdoses, then everybody is looking for that dealer that sold that smack or down or whatever you want to call it?
There seems to be a hype on that in the last 5, maybe almost 10 years now.
So people want the shit that kills you, right?
oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, you mean in that sense? I thought you meant like is someone trying to press charges. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And to go back to your initial question with the fentanyl being a stronger draw, like you were saying, to the youth that doesn't really know true heroin, you know, like because nowadays it's almost impossible to get some good pure heroin, so you don't really get that full experience, and that was kind of what I was getting at is the fentanyl gave me a stronger nod. You know, like you get some fentanyl and you're gonna be nodding. But you get heroin and it's like you might not nod, you might not get a rush, it's likely going to be pretty weak, and then in another 4 hours you want more. You know? And it's like, so the fentanyl gives you a more guaranteed high in my experience. But with that potency, you're towing the line with every use. You know, like you're risking your life, especially for someone like me who is an IV drug user.
Yeah.
Like you inject fentanyl, you're playing with death, you know, every single time.
Yeah, it's because there's carfentanil and there's so many different strands of, I forget how many, but some are pretty.
And so then now they're mixing it too, the benzo dope, right?
Yeah, then there's benzo.
So what is that? They're using carfentanil combined with a benzo. Do you know which benzo they use, or is it just whatever?
Pharmaceutical, so it breaks down because you can't really fix like most benzo, right? You won't break down the spoon and that, so it's pharmaceutical.
And it depends when you get what kind of benzo. There's weak stuff and there's really strong stuff.
Okay, so in terms of, because part of the reason that I think that maybe the government is behind it is because it's winding up in northern communities really far away from here. The super deadly like benzo dope is turning up in like, you know, Moosonee, Ontario. That's like James Bay. That's so far away from here, you know. It's like, how the fuck is it getting here? Well, that's I know.
Up in Churchill and that.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm coming from northern BC, and you know, there's a lot of Indigenous people who are dying up there, and part of me wonders whether this is like, you know, Canada's counterinsurgency strategy, because you know, just a few years ago, then they're blocking the railroads all over the place. You know, they shut down Canada and fighting the pipelines. And then COVID happened, and then all of a sudden, you know,
So I remember how it was like, there's methadone, right? So a lot of people were on methadone. There's 28 pharmacies in the downtown east side that dealt with just methadone, right? And then one day, and then next day it's methadose. It's way weaker, and I, plus most people I know, relapse that very next day.
Okay.
Because when you did it, like, you know, it didn't last 24 hours or whatever. You had those old experiences of waking up sick and then logging up. Now it was scored, and you know, like So I couldn't get to the pharmacy. I had to pick up, you know, and I had been clean off the needle for probably 8 years.
Even if that wasn't an intentional push to relapse, which I would posit that it probably is, that's extremely irresponsible from a professional perspective.
So everybody across Canada did, and then they relapsed, and now they're back on the needle, and then all of a sudden they're fentanyl.
Or you see all these pharmacies. There's more pharmacies out there than liquor stores. right?
Yeah, well, they're making it really easy for people to be addicts here, you know? And so now, you know, like I went over to OPS and I saw the vending machine where they got the biometrics, you know, where they're issuing drugs to drug users. And I've always been, you know, like I used to volunteer with the Drug Users Advocacy League in Ottawa. I've always been all about harm reduction. But I think that once you give pharmaceutical companies the opportunity to profit off of the opiate crisis, you've gone too far, because then they have the financial incentive for the problem to continue and to get worse. And
yeah, put a cap on the strength and stuff, but it's alcohol, right?
yeah. And so I don't know what would make this better, you know, because let me ask you, how do you feel about the safe supply?
Well, like we're doing a lot with Safe Supply. We got some funding for Capacity Club, right?
Okay.
And it's with cocaine, heroin, real heroin.
So is that government funding?
Well, yeah, and then we're working with Dolph. You said it was with Dolph?
Yeah, Drug Users Liberation Front.
Yeah. And VANDU and Dolph, so we get together and do some brainstorming, and slowly it's coming together. But that's what's his name? What's her name? I don't know.
Aaron.
Aaron, whatever her name is.
Eris.
So he gets it from the dark web, the drugs, and it's supposed to be like heroin.
Well, I mean, yeah, the one thing that I'm really happy about is that, you know, prohibition is, you know, over, kind of, pretty much, or it's unenforceable at least. And so I think that this is a good thing, a step in the right direction, you know, and what we were all fighting for a long time, right? But then now I see something that's kind of, you know, like now there's a whole industry of, you know, poverty pimping, basically. And they're making money off of this opiate crisis. And there's a lot of people whose salaries depend on the problem continuing. And so I don't think the problem is going to be solved when you have people, you know, whose salaries depend on the problem continuing, you know?
It's like a lot of things downtown inside, like, you know, you want the problems to be like police, you know, like they make the average cop makes over $100,000 a year, right?
Wow.
That's a rookie, right?
Yeah. So, okay, so one of the reasons that I was really wanting to cover this story was because I heard that the cops, they're not carrying naloxone anymore.
Yeah. I've seen cops stand there, and there's somebody clearly ODing, and they just stand there waiting for the ambulance. So some guys tried to intervene, and they had naloxone, and the cops get back, you know, like, you know.
Yeah. So I mean that to me.
As far as I'm concerned, sorry to interrupt, but that's essentially an assisted murder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you are preventing someone from stepping in and saving that person's life when your job is to protect people.
Yeah.
Like, if it was any other demographic of professional,
Yeah.
they'd be charged.
Yeah.
If an EMT did that, they'd be charged. If someone who works in one of these services downtown Eastside, they'd be charged, probably.
They just walk past.
You know?
That's right.
Yeah, and then then allegedly the reason that the cops aren't carrying naloxone anymore is because of the budget, you know. But that's absolutely ridiculous,
Yeah.
you know. Like there's such a large
charges.
budget for other areas of, you know, treating the.
To have morals don't cost anything, right?
What's that?
To have morals.
Yeah.
don't cost
Yeah.
anything.
That's a very good point, yeah.
Yeah, and then also, I mean, they're making money off of naloxone too. You know, Purdue Pharmaceutical, I believe, the company that marketed these OxyContin and kind of is really responsible for the opiate crisis in a really major way, apparently is now making a killing off of naloxone. And I would say that it's like they should not be allowed, like that whatever patent, you know, exists, or, you know, that they shouldn't be allowed to profit off of the problem that they
They're all generating crisis.
Making something to eat that'll get you sick. I mean, we got something here that you can buy that make that system go
Well, that's how the pharmaceutical industry works.
Yeah.
Is they find some drug that doesn't cure you, and then leads to other problems, and then they sell you something that treats the side effects of the thing that didn't cure you to begin with. So I don't know, but the thing is that if I think there's an assumption. On like a lot of people assume that everybody here wants to get clean, and if they don't, then the question is then, okay, well, if people want to use drugs, that's their right. I believe that's your body. You should get to choose what you should do. But is this industry of poverty pimping, making people dependent upon the system, there's lots of drug users that are able to kind of pay their rent, are able to work jobs, right? Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
So what we do here, we don't push anybody towards recovery. That's their decision.
Yeah.
Like I said, we won't stop them with evaluations, but we just keep people safe while they're in their so-called addiction. It's education around harm reduction and stuff like that.
They have a housing problem here too, and that's why
That's a lot of it, because it's like, okay, so let's say what I heard is that the detox is good here, that the detox is good.
Yeah.
But then what do you get out of detox?
Yeah.
Where do you go? So do you want to talk about your experience, Josh? Because you got clean. I think you had the support of your family. Is that right?
I did. I wouldn't say I didn't, but we weren't in communication when I decided to get clean. At that point, they had realized that any further communication was just enabling me.
Okay.
So they stopped it. I had robbed my mother probably over 20 times in a row.
Let's hear your story then. What worked for you?
So ultimately, I don't think that there is any one right way for someone to get clean. There's no blanket cure, And I think the biggest thing is will. You have to want it. You have to
want it really, really bad.
You have to really. Exactly, and it wasn't my first time around. It took me quite a few attempts. I went to rehab 4 different times. I think, honestly, what I refer to as kind of my turning point intellectually or in my mind was when I got arrested, and I spent a few months in jail during the summer. And that was my first experience abstaining from drug use. And it wasn't my own choice, clearly. I was locked in jail. But it offered me the opportunity to step away from the drugs, clear my head, and have a clear mind again. And from there, I realized it would be possible. While I was consumed by my drug use, I didn't think anything else was possible ever again.
Yeah.
I was this is just who I am. I'm gonna die with a needle in my arm, and I was 23 years old. I didn't think there was any opportunity to get clean. I didn't think it was possible for me. But going to jail showed me that it was possible. It's difficult, and it will probably take some outside assistance, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And so eventually, I got out of jail, and I think within a week I was shooting dope again because I didn't have any help. I didn't I got clean, but I didn't have a support network or anything like that, anyone to show me how to stay clean, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I started using again, and then I was on the run doing my thing for probably another year and a half before I finally decided I had become homeless, and I was living on the street, and winter was coming, and I was like, you know what, I think it's time for me to go and try this again. And I called a buddy of mine who used to use with me. He was clean at the time, and he offered to help me get into detox, and I went to detox, and I pushed for them to not relinquish supervision of me for as long as possible.
Yeah.
My insurance only wanted to cover 14 days of rehab. I was like, no, that's not fucking enough. I'm gonna die if you let me out.
Yeah.
Please let me stay here. So the person that I was working with in rehab talked to my insurance, and they agreed to keep me for the full 28 days because I explained that my situation was severe. When I had come in, I was, what do you call it? I was speedballing. I was doing coke and heroin through IV use every single day, multiple times a day. I still have scars up and down my arms from when I was really going at it with coke. I would shoot up 15 times a day, and they're never going anywhere,
Yeah.
And it is what it is. I don't have an issue with that, but you know, my point is my situation was severe, but they didn't really want to help, you know, like they just wanted what the insurance would cover because that's their guaranteed check, and they're like, all right, get out the door.
Yeah.
So I had to personally advocate for myself and tell them I'm not fucking going anywhere. I don't want to die. So,
Yeah.
you know, from there, they agreed to keep me another, I think it was 10 days beyond the 28 days, because I told them I wanted to go to a halfway house from there. So they agreed to keep me in, and they kept me until there was an open bed for the halfway house.
Okay.
And then I went to the halfway house for 6 months, and through rehab in the halfway house, I got connected with Narcotics Anonymous, and that really connecting with people in Narcotics Anonymous is what helped me stay clean for an extended period of time.
Okay, so I think from what your story, what the biggest thing that I'm hearing is that you really, really gotta want it.
Yeah.
And so let
Not
me
only
ask
do you have to want it, you have to fight for it.
You have to fight
You have
for
to
it.
speak up for yourself because no one else gives a fuck.
But there's a difference between the states and Canada.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very naive.
Insurance, right?
I'm very
Insurance.
naive to what's going on here. I've only been in the Vancouver area for a year now.
But I'm
So-
talking about
That's
your
similar to my
insurance,
story.
right?
What's
That
that?
covers it, your insurance, right, covers your.
Yeah, 100%. Like,
I got another question though. I got another
state-provided
question.
insurance.
So it's about what kept you going, because you clearly really wanted it to, so you must have felt that you had a reason to live, something you wanted to accomplish with your life. What was that?
Yeah, I don't really, at the time I didn't really know, and to be quite honest, I don't quite know what my purpose in life is. Right now I feel my
Why
purpose,
did you want to get clean so bad?
it wasn't good. Like using drugs wasn't fucking good. You know, we didn't have,
every day.
yeah, that's exactly it.
'Cause
I
it
was
sucks.
living a war against myself every single day, and my mental state was getting worse. It wasn't getting
Do you
better.
believe in God?
Not in the traditional sense, but I do believe that there is a spiritual interconnectedness between everything in the world.
Okay.
I
Because
would-
in
I would
NA,
say-
NA step 1 is kind of turn
Yeah.
your life over to a higher power. Do you think you did
Yeah.
that before meeting NA? Or?
Honestly, in NA, that was probably my biggest struggle with the literature at the time,
Yeah.
because through my teenage years, I believed that I was an atheist.
Okay.
I think that through psilocybin use, I've come to find my own spirituality,
Yeah.
and feel a connection with the world and all the living things on it.
Mhm.
But for the longest time, I didn't have that. I was spiritually bankrupt.
Right. And so this is something like I've been going around interviewing people and asking them what works, and a lot of the times it's community, it's religion, it's spirituality, which are not things which you hear Gabor Mate talk about. You know, like he's very anti-religion, anti-God, and you know, this is one of the things that like helps people. You know, or that I've seen it. I've seen, you know, it's part of NA. So tell us about your experience with NA.
Well, I did it for a while, about 2 years. I participated in it on and off, probably for about 4 years. But since I got clean the last time, I did it for about 2 years before it kind of just fizzled out. And I don't know, it was a lot of showboating and a lot
Okay.
of ego, and a lot of people still practicing the same behaviors, just not slamming drugs into their arm.
Okay.
And it just I felt I got to a point where I kind of grew past it.
I've heard
Yeah.
that before. I've heard that before.
Too repetitive.
And
Yeah,
so
very
now
repetitive.
you call yourself California Clean, which is kind of
Yeah, I mean,
like
I
straight.
don't-
It's different than straight edge, and it's like you only do good drugs kind of thing.
Yeah,
Sorry,
essentially,
camera.
I stick
Yeah.
to the natural substances. So I smoke marijuana. But when I do use these substances, I try to be very conscious of my motivation.
Yeah.
You know, like I do not smoke weed all day every day.
Yeah.
Like, because that puts me in a bad place. I have to stay productive to keep up my own mental well-being. You know, like I said, I still live with PTSD and depression, and every day is still a war for me. But it's a much more manageable war, and I have a better attack plan when I wake up in the morning. You know. But yeah, the substance use that I involve myself in now is, I would say, more of a medicated approach, where it's like if I'm in a really bad state of depression, I know a couple bong rips are going to help reset my mental state.
Yeah, and
it
it's
makes me okay, and there's no negative effects to that. you
well,
know?
it's so
Like, I'm
funny
not gonna-
because the
well, I mean,
term
we
self-medicate
can-
gets a bad rap, but it's like, you know, who knows your body better than you? You know,
Yeah,
if you accept
100%.
that medication is sometimes a good thing, then self-medication probably makes sense, right?
I think that it's just one of those things where it's really complex.
Yeah,
And
because
for
people lie to
someone
themselves a
coming
lot
from
too,
a
right?
heavily addicted background, it's difficult to do what I was just saying. It took a long time for me to get to that place, and I would say I still struggle with it. Where it's like I still have tendencies to just be like, oh, let's just get fucking high right now, you know? But it's like, no, I have some things I have to do today, and if I get stoned, I'm not gonna feel like it. I'm gonna feel like sitting on the couch, you know? And so I have to be mindful, and that's a difficult thing to do, especially if you're dealing with a multitude of other things like mental health issues or what have you. You know, someone's bipolar or schizophrenic or whatever.
Well, that's another part of this whole story is that probably a whole lot of these people, the underlying thing is schizophrenia or another form of mental illness. And the drug addiction isn't even necessarily the real problem.
Yeah.
Could you speak a bit about that?
There was, what's it called, the mental institution? Anyways,
There's a mental institution that closed down,
and
and
then you just load the bus up and drop them all everywhere down here, downtown east side.
Yeah.
You know, like whack of people, you know.
Got them all
That's crazy.
running around.
yeah, and then obviously then a lot of them became drug users, and
And a ton of them probably ended up becoming
And
incarcerated too.
Yeah, shot or killed.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Tragic
see
things
some
occurred.
Stuff like some people like psychosis, I don't know, it's a little past that, but it's just somebody's else, right? And
so here, okay, so if somebody is obviously psychotic and they show up at VANDU, what do?
you just try to talk to them, you know, try to don't recognize anything, you know.
So-
Coach, you go chill, and you act up, you gotta leave, right?
Yeah.
And is there are there services available for people who are psychotic that don't involve just being locked up?
Yeah, there used to be, it's called the living room, but now it's an OPS,
Yeah.
right?
So they turned the place that used to be for and they turned that into an injection site?
Yeah.
Okay, so now where do the people who are psychotic go?
I don't know, is there any
Just
other?
nowhere, just to the street or they exposed to the injection places. The one that Kevin was just talking about moved up the road from us here, just a couple blocks down that way.
Yeah. Okay. And so, and do you have opinions about like
We're recording.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
okay, maybe we'll just wrap up in a second here. Yeah. So do you have opinions about like methadone versus methadose versus Suboxone and like what's best, what's worse? Sometimes they call it what the golden handcuffs or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you feel, or liquid handcuffs? What do you call about?
With me, so I went into, I had a bunch of money, didn't know anybody out here, ran out of money. I got this addiction rate, so now I'm getting in trouble. Somebody introduced me to the recovery. I went into recovery, and then I did the 12-step program, and then it was a 3 months stint. But I stayed 5 months. I stayed 4 months there, and then I went to second stage housing where you can work, right? A friend of mine that I met in first stage housing, he was there, and we got jobs just like that in demo. So my first paycheck, I still hadn't found my sister. I came down here with the first paycheck and dabbled a little, right? And got back to the place. They knew right away because it was like 5 in the morning when I got back. So they kicked me out right away. You know, people that screw up, they'll kick them out no matter what time of day or night it is.
Yeah.
You gotta leave, right?
Yeah, the house I was in, you had 1 hour.
That's our roads are like that too.
So anyways, but I was off heroin, right? I smoked some rocks, right? I had a couple beers, and so I found my sister on that time too. The very first day I came down there, I found her because I bumped into a buddy of mine, and so that all came together. And my sister was sick, so I took her back to her place, and she had pneumonia, and she was pretty sick, so I brought her back, and heal her back to health and that, and I still wasn't using heroin for about a month, and I had this itch, right? So I got some heroin, and I did it, and got some more, And probably the third day I thought, I'm not doing this, I can't do this, right? So I went, got a methadone right away, right? So when we go to get a methadone clinic, a doctor and stuff like that, got a doctor, got a strip, went to a methadone clinic. So I just needed something to keep me busy while I was on methadone, right? So that's what VANDU is, because we got a lot of subgroups under VANDU, and the one is methadone group, it's BC APON, British Columbia Association of People on Methadone, and they did quite a bit of stuff in the last few years, but that's how I got introduced to this place. But I just knew I didn't want to go back. I knew I had to quit, right? Got heroin, right? But I was on methadone for 10 years, right? Lost my teeth, and my bones ached, and all this stuff, and I just stopped, right? So I had to get some down.
And I heard it's much more difficult to come off of methadone than heroin, right?
Yeah. So I was just using more heroin and more down. And
Yeah.
Just wait, just hang on. And then so but now like I was injecting and I OD'd for the first time in about 40 years. I OD'd and I was at my daughter's place and I don't remember anything. She said I was getting on. I tried to get the paramedics or something. They called the cops. Where she lived, they called the cops, and I woke up in recovery. And I'm not in recovery, and we call it in the hospital in ICU. And wake up, like, what the hell's going on? You know, I didn't know anything. So they sent me walking. So I had to walk all the way back down. I had about $800 at the girl's house. Got that. And I thought to myself, I could have been very much by myself, because I used to wake up every morning, do a smash, and they come to work, right? They'd get me going, right? And so I quit hitting down that same day, so I just do the odd drag. And I got a routine where I just smoke just a couple times a day, which scares me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Methadone, they tried to put me on it. I had it for a bit, and then I said, no, it's not like that.
Okay, I think that there's a meeting that's about to happen here. Okay, I think there's a meeting that's about to happen here. So I guess any final thoughts, any message for the people of the world that want to understand the opiate crisis, that want to understand where things are at on the downtown east side?
Downtown east side, things are pretty tough, but one thing I say about the community is people band together when the fentanyl crisis started. Everybody was taking courses in Naloxone. People were saving other people on the streets, even though the cops were. Any kind of crisis like that, it's a really tight community. It's like, if you're from someplace else where you're being shunned, and you come here and you feel like, there's no judging, right? And, but it's got bad things too, right? The struggles and, fighting for human rights and stuff. We're pretty busy. Some people are getting screwed over by the government pretty bad. So if you got any better from where you are now, enjoy it.
Okay, final thought, final words, Joe?
It's not as bad as they say it is. Like, visitors don't want to come here, but they do. And I just take it one day at a time.
One day at a time, Joe?
Okay, Josh, how about you? Final words?
I don't know. Keep trying.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Okay, thank you very much to each of you for your time and for all the work that you do.